not really sure why we're working on the echoic goofy goat, but I think that it's important for the student. If you've ever heard that, if you've ever heard a verbal imitation target that maybe wasn't functional for your student, or you just didn't understand how to collaborate with a speech therapist or a BCBA around the topic of verbal imitation, you will want to log into our third mini podcast episode. I'm doing some mini episodes this summer, and Dr. Barbara Esch has created the ESA part of the VB map and the ESA revised, both amazing tools. And she has said, please don't take targets directly from those assessments unless they are functional for your student. If you've ever gotten into a disagreement or thought a mean thing when somebody talked about verbal imitation and a client that you're working with, you will want to tune in. I'm talking about a strategy that I have used as a speech language pathologist to work collaboratively together with BCBAs around the idea of verbal imitation. Most clients get half hour, 1 hour of speech therapy, and they may be spending more time with an RBT or with a BCBA. And so we want to make sure that our student has many functional opportunities to work on verbal imitation. I'm going to talk about my framework here on this mini episode. I hope that you love it. I'm Rose Griffin, a speech therapist, board-certified behavior analyst, and founder of ABA Speech. It wasn't all that long ago that I felt overwhelmed by providing therapy for my autistic students and any students who were not yet speaking. Fast forward through many doubts, tears, research, and courses, and you will see the framework that I use today and share with over 60,000 readers weekly. One that will help you support your students and feel more confident in the process. I created the ABA Speech podcast to give you simple, step-by-step strategies to help you reach all of your students wherever they are on their communication journeys. If you're a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT student, or parent who's looking to help all students develop a way to communicate with the world, you are in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Verbal imitation, echoics. We're getting into it today. Welcome to my third mini podcast episode. I try to do this in the summer where I answer your burning questions. And today we're talking all about SLP BCBA collaboration around the idea of verbal imitation. I think that this is a very much a touchy subject because I know personally I've done some consults with ABA clinics who don't have a speech language pathologist on staff, and they may say, you know what, I have a kid who is really having a hard time making the K sound, like the K sound. What tips or strategies could you tell me to help him make that? And inside, I want to crawl out of my skin because I went to school for 6 years to be able to answer that question effectively. And I would never want to shame anybody professionally. Absolutely not. But there's really not tips and strategies. If your child cannot make a particular sound, they probably need speech therapy. And really, as a team, we need to say, is this an important target right now? Like, are we working on joint attention, or are we working on lots of other foundational skills? I'm big on wanting students to verbalize, and I think that's really important from the get-go. But we want to make sure that we don't turn our kids off to verbalizing, and we want to make sure, all the BCBAs, listen please, that we're not choosing targets directly from the echoic assessment from the VB map without the idea of looking at the context for the child. Dr. Barbara Esch is a friend of ABA Speech. She's been on the show in probably season 1. That is the creator of the ESA and now the ESA Revised. She came out with her own tool available through Different Roads to Learning, which is amazing. And we want to make sure that the verbal imitation targets or echoic targets are things that are important and functional for our students. That's the number one thing. I'm going to be doing some more coursework here at ABA Speech for CEU content. One is going to be called From Silos to Synergy, which will come out about the same time this podcast is going to come out, but we'll replay it all year. And also it'll be available as a recorded course in the ABA Speech Connection. And what I'm going to talk about in that is, what does the actual coursework look like for a BCBA? Like, what do we learn? We learn a lot. What does the actual coursework look like for a speech language pathologist? 6 years of school. Externship, CFY year. It is rigorous. And we have a broad scope of what we treat, right? We could work with people with traumatic brain injuries, people with swallowing disorders, people who have had maybe dementia or stroke, people who have ALS, people who are autistic, like people who have apraxia, selective mutism. I can keep going. See how broad this is? And I think sometimes we don't understand each other because we don't know all the work that we did to get those little letters after our name. So we're going to be talking about that because I think when we know more about that, and it kind of informs how we're going to talk to each other. I mean, I know the person that said, hey, can you give me a tip? Or actually, they said the word trick because I didn't like that word. Can you give me a trick on how to help this kid make the k sound? And there really is no trick. It's a lot of studying. We take as speech language pathologists courses on how you make every single sound. And if that sound is not stimulable for the child, why is that? And is that a target right now for the student? Other sounds by that sound may affect it. We take courses on speech and hearing anatomy. Oh, traumatized just saying that. I'm thinking about the book. I still have it in my basement. We take a lot of courses, and BCBAs do too, in research. And that's why we're like, it's not on the task list, or, it's not in Java, our articles, because we obviously care about what we do. And then when we come to these disagreements, it can be tough. I want to share with you how I navigate working on verbal imitation with learners. I do talk about this more in some of the courses I offer in the ABA Speech Connection, where we talk about the most current research in our course, Naturalistic Interventions Next Steps. It's a really cool 5-hour course, kind of riffing on naturalistic developmental behavioral interventions, which is a whole line of research, which is amazing. And I talk about it often. And so we talk about, well, when do these sounds typically occur? I wouldn't want to work on the F sound with a kid who isn't making the B sound or any sounds unless they're really stimulable for it. There is research that says, okay, if this child is an English speaking client, and they have other languages too. I'm just thinking about the McLeod et al. Research that I discuss. We say this is typically when these sounds are acquired by students or when they start saying them. So that's really, really important information. So I discuss that there. So as the speech language pathologist on a team, and if you are working alongside a BCBA, so I've utilized this strategy in a public school and also a non-public program. I, as a speech language pathologist, may give a speech sound test, something like the Goldman-Fristow. I may also feel comfortable to give, because I'm duly certified, less than 500, sorry, that's my grammatical error, fewer than 500 people are duly certified as SLPs and BCBAs. I feel comfortable with that, giving the VB map, the ESA. Maybe I give the Goldman-Fristow and the BCBA gives the ESA, which is the echoic assessment. And then we come together and we look at the results. And we say, okay, what are going to be some functional targets for this particular learner? We want to make sure that we are collaborating together because speech language pathologists have a wealth of information. And I know that everybody listening would never want to turn a child off to verbalizing. But if we don't plan our intervention correctly and for what's correct for this child, developmentally, what they're stimulable for, we may be making a major error. We might be making a major error. So please take any type of programming that you are putting forth for a child for verbal imitation very seriously. If you don't have a speech language pathologist on your team, take some of our courses. I think that will help you navigate this. Another area just to be mindful of that we're going to cover in the ABA Speech Connection in 2026 is we're going to start talking about different communication disorders like selective mutism, like apraxia, so that BCBAs can understand, what are the characteristics of, for example, apraxia? That is not really within my scope. I think that I need to make a referral. This all gets tied back to our ethical code. See how that works? I'm a nerd, but I taught an ethics class here at Kent State for many years. And so it all ties back to our ethical code and thinking about you don't know what you don't know. I wouldn't expect a BCBA to know what apraxia is because we don't take courses on that. We don't treat that. We don't write goals for that, but we might inadvertently be doing that. And so that kind of gets tricky. I really love to do this. As the speech therapist, we give our assessments, we discuss what the targets will be. In the sessions with the speech therapist, the child is working on new verbal imitation or echoic targets. And once those specific words are mastered or met criterion, then they go into a generalization phase, or we start to take maintenance data where it's like, yeah, you know what? They can say the word cookie with the speech therapist. They did that 3 sessions in a row. Awesome. Now let's generalize that word to the BCBA, generalize that word to the RBT, whoever is on the team. I think when we take that type of data, we are being really ethical and really mindful of working on verbal imitation together. So if possible, work on the assessment together. Maybe the speech therapist does a speech sound test and the BCBA does the ESA or the ESA revised. We come together, we discuss what the goal will be. We can always use the Autism IEP Goal Bank. I will also link that, my freebie with almost 300 goals. And we are going to have the speech language pathologist, if there's one on the team, work on those new words. Once those new words or sounds are mastered or have met criterion, we're going to continue to keep those in the learner's repertoire by using them maybe in natural environment. Maybe that's where we're targeting those words anyway, which we should be thinking about that anyway, more naturalistic working. And we're going to continue to take data on that so we can have this really robust list of words that our student is using. I hope this has been helpful information. I'm going to link in the show notes the ABA Speech Connection, where you can take that naturalistic course for next steps. It's a 5-hour course, and I talk about verbal imitation a bit more. And also, I am going to link our ethics course that talks about the ethics of navigating this situation with speech therapists and BCBAs. This is our 3rd installment. And on the last mini show, which I am going to record soon, we are going to be discussing tools and strategies that are free that you can use today. See you soon.